Today we are simply going to go over those facts today. So as you remember where we left off at, right? Where we left off at was simply Candace Owens telling you that, in a nutshell, that the Israeli government had a lot to do with Charlie Kirk's death. Now, she was also trying to say that there was someone else, let alone a billionaire, that was funding him. It was Bill Ackman. Said the billionaire was funding the guy, right? That Charlie Kirk was taking quite a lot of money. A lot of money. To push an agenda. To push a lot of the right-wing conservative agendas. Now, what Charlie Kirk didn't know was that he would literally be a sacrifice and a martyr for a different agenda that was being pushed, which would be the removal of freedom of speech, which is one of the heaviest first of the amendments, the First Amendment. Little did he know that he was going to be a sacrifice for it. Now, here's the other kicker to that. What if he wasn't actually a sacrifice? And what if he was just another puppet actor in the play? We will be going over some of that information. First, I want to start with what's been going on, right? So as you saw in the beginning, Jimmy Kimmel has been suspended and the show has been canceled. All because of a little remark.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from it.
That's right. ABC had suspended Jimmy Kimmel after his comments that he had made about Charlie Kirk's killing led to a group of ABC.
We were just about to walk in. Interestingly enough, they waited to pull the plug on this right as the studio audience was about to walk in. It wasn't like this morning or last night. They waited for everyone to come into work today.
As if they were trying to make a statement. See, when I heard him say that, that's exactly what went through my mind. They were trying to make a statement by doing that, by having the actual studio audience come in and witness it being canceled. They didn't want it to be an excuse that they had to make up later on. They wanted to see firsthand, or show them firsthand, that the show had actually been canceled and Jimmy Kimmel had in fact been canceled. Now, this was really to make a certain statement, of course, right? The whole thing about Jimmy Kimmel being suspended is a direct attack on the First Amendment. It's a chess move. This is a chess move in plain sight, and it's just part of the psyop. It's actually one of the main results of it, but how it's actually faring out, I don't necessarily know if they planned for this, or they might have. They might have already planned for this. Remember, these things that they're doing are planned years and years and years in advance as far as their projects go, right? Project this, project that, project Bluebeam, such and such, right? These things are planned years in advance, decades in advance. So I'm pretty sure they foresee us rebelling against them suspending Jimmy Kimmel. But I don't think they understand the power of social media and the internet.
You know, they didn't tell us what had happened. They just said that the show was canceled. Initially, my concern was, you know, I hope everyone's okay, no one got injured. As they told us the show was being canceled, at the same time online, they announced that it was indefinitely, which we can probably assume is forever, taken off the air because of certain comments that were made, which I was not aware of. And then I went to go look to see what those comments were, and they didn't really seem to justify, you know, the means. You know, it seemed to be a bit extreme.
Activate now. Extreme is a very big understatement. Reason why it's a huge understatement is because if you didn't even catch it in the beginning, that small little, I want to say 7 seconds of you hearing Jimmy Kimmel talk about they were trying to leverage what happened to Charlie Kirk as far as, the conservative movement or Donald Trump's political party, the MAGA movement, is trying to capitalize off Charlie Kirk's death. That's literally all he said. Now, of course, that wasn't a joke that he was saying. And see, the thing is, a lot of things with comedy, they say the truth is the funniest part of things, right? The truth is always the funniest part, not the lie. The lie can be more entertaining than the truth, but the truth will still never be more funnier, okay? The truth will always be more funnier than the lie. And it always hits home harder than the lie. So, of course, this hit home for majority of that political party, for majority of the MAGA movement, for Donald Trump indefinitely. So, of course, he was one of the first people to make some type of, remark as far as that even goes.
Now's the time to get together. Now's the time to find people that are just like you, who feel the same, and join with them and drag them along tomorrow, 4:30, right here. Be in protest, standing with Jimmy Kimmel. Jimmy Kimmel,
Speak and go after anybody that is opposing them.
Now, I've still been trying to figure out how my video players have also just suddenly been locked up for the past couple of days. Like, as far as you see that gray bar right there, I can't really move it. It doesn't actually go anywhere. I can't also do a 10-second back. I can't do a 10-second forward. None of that. For some strange reason, my buttons have just been disabled. I have no earthly idea why. My drivers are updated, so on and so forth, right? All updates have been done on this computer. But for some strange reason, like I said, when I did the Charlie Kirk interview, I should say the Charlie Kirk podcast, all of a sudden my video players have been locked up. And I didn't understand why. Even down to my player that I tried to use on the side, as you guys saw, my other one, all of a sudden during the pod, it locked up. I said, okay. I understand. Chum, come down. What's going on? I do understand now. Now, again, this would result in demonstrators outside of Disney Studios protesting what happened to Jimmy Kimmel, as they did not like it. Protesting while I still can. These are people that
freedom of speech and canceling Jimmy Kimmel, taking him off the air indefinitely because he spoke and he expressed an opinion is outrageous. It's unacceptable, and that's why everyone's here.
This is unprecedented. We are looking at an authoritarian government crackdown on free speech. Anything that they don't agree with, they are more than willing to use their power to ignore the First Amendment. It's unprecedented and it's extremely concerning, and that's why people are out here today, and they're going to continue to be protesting and demanding that society push back.
and moving forward.
They need to put Kimmel back on the air, and they need to start having a backbone, because if our media companies are going to fold on the First Amendment, this country is in trouble.
That is an understatement, once again. And here's the thing. So the next thing I want to look at here, right, is what this whole thing is even about.
Andrew Schultz recently said something. Rob, if you can pull up this clip from Andrew Schultz. I don't know what all of a sudden happened and prompted Andrew Schultz to say this, but go ahead and play this clip of Andrew Schultz reacting to what happened between Ben Shapiro and Candace Owens. Go ahead.
he makes the argument for censorship. He calls it something else.
Yeah, I forget the term. I have it in my phone.
But I don't even think he's using the term right. But he's basically like, there's a window of ideas we accept.
Yes.
And we accept ideas between this, I guess this is, if I get window, you're looking like this. So we accept ideas between here and here. And anything outside of that window, well, you're fireable. That's censorship.
What?
But
Yeah.
he's acting as if this is like a justified reason for firing people when you built your identity and platform off of no censorship and freedom of speech and facts don't care about your feelings and all this shit.
It's also
And that's the thing. So they're talking about Ben Shapiro, who's an actual conservative, right? Very much on the side of Charlie Kirk in his statements. Now, what Andrew Schultz was actually doing here was calling out the hypocrisy of Ben Shapiro and the fact that he was pretty much saying that if you talk about the Israeli government or try to disrespect anything with the Israelis, you pretty much will be censored on that. Same thing with the Jews. If you talk about anything with the Jews, you're pretty much anti-Semitic, so on and so forth. You're crazy, this, that, and the third. You can't really say anything about them. If you notice, certain people you just can't say anything about in the media. Now, what Andrew was also getting at was the fact that there was a secret Israeli media company that was pretty much secretly running Hollywood.
funny that window happens to end where his beliefs end.
Isn't
it interesting?
You would say that.
Not being pro-Israel, that's where the window ends. That's also your specific personal belief.
What?
So I just don't see.
You can't have an opinion on your platform that is not pro a country that is not ours?
Yeah.
Wait a minute.
Crazy. I wish.
So wait, is the Daily Wire an American media platform or is it an Israeli media platform? I'm just asking.
This guy's cooking.
I'm just asking. If the rule is, I'm just saying, if the rule is you cannot be critical, because he has no problem being very critical of America.
Yep.
He's critical of the left in America. Left is half the country. You have no problem eviscerating half of the country.
That's the current party in power.
But you can't criticize Israel as a country. That's just another country, unless you're saying, and you're clearly admitting, that the Daily Wire is an arm of the Israeli, I guess, media or propaganda machine. Is that? Oof. Are you manipulating the religious right in America? Are you manipulating the right-wing conservatives in America and selling them country western movies and putting on your little cowboy hat and fake moving to Nashville so you can take all their money and then in the process restricting free speech, one of the core tenets of the American identity? Ben.
Benjamin.
What is happening? There's trouble in Paris.
Pause it right there. For context, Daily Wire is in Nashville, but he's in Florida. But yeah, what do you think about his points?
I mean, it makes a valid point, but and I sent Rob another video of Ben kind of contradicting himself, but he's 100% right. Like what? And by the way, that's what attracted me to Ben Shapiro in the first place. That dialogue, that everybody say what you want, do what you want. Facts don't care about your feelings. This is a place where you can say anything except that one topic. And we obviously know Ben is 1,000% Israel. We get it. It's no secret. They could do no wrong. And can we play this, Patrick? I sent Rob this clip of.
And see, that's the thing. As we go to the next part, Ben Shapiro is pretty much saying that, or should I say subliminally letting you know, that there is definitely an Israeli media company, or should I say a censorship, Israeli media censorship going on, not just in Israel, but also in America. Like I said, similar to when you talk about the Jews. If you talk about a certain group that is empowering America with money, you pretty much are going to get censored yourself or canceled out. And that's exactly what happened to Jimmy Kimmel. But he was pretty much used as an example. They set an example with Jimmy Kimmel on what's to come these next, I want to say, year or two. So moving along real quick, I want to show Ben Shapiro talking about the Charlie Kirk situation and Jimmy Kimmel right now. But I want you to pay attention to what Trump also says in his response to this. This is our president.
Our nation in mourning after the assassination of Charlie Kirk.
Supporters have been paying their respects outside of Turning Point USA's headquarters in Phoenix, Arizona. Charlie Kirk will be memorialized with a funeral service on Sunday at State Farm Stadium in Glendale, Arizona. I'm Harris Faulkner. You are in the Faulkner Focus. In a powerful tribute, Utah Valley University draped a massive American flag over the area where Charlie Kirk was assassinated. Students there returned to classes yesterday. Some say they are very shaken.
I think even just being on campus was hard for everybody. It's a super emotional moment.
This is somewhere that we go to further our lives, and it could be also the place where it ends our lives.
He celebrated all the things I support: family, God, love. He never went a day with in his life never preaching about how much he loved those.
I think it was important that he really, spoke to the youth, because they're our upcoming generation.
I don't think UVU is ever going to be the same.
You saw Tuesday and Wednesday, we're checking in on the nation and on that campus on a regular basis with our love, our thoughts, and we want to hear theirs, what they're going through. Moments ago, President Trump honored Charlie Kirk's legacy while speaking from the UK.
Charlie Kirk was heinously assassinated for speaking his mind. He was a great young man, incredible future. Some people said he might be president someday. I told him, I said, Charlie, I think you have a good shot someday at being president. And he just wanted to take care of youth. He loved youth. I've never seen anybody relate to youth like Charlie, and they related to him, and they're devastated.
And as we take a moment as a nation to bow our heads and think better thoughts about the future if we can, the left is making that very hard to do by pushing false narratives, like the one about Charlie Kirk's suspected assassin. ABC has suspended Jimmy Kimmel's late night show live indefinitely over remarks he made surrounding all of this that we've been through. Kimmel is reportedly furious over the decision and looking for ways to get out of his contract. Here is exactly what he said in his opening monologue on Monday.
We hit some new lows over the weekend with the MAGA gang desperately trying to characterize this kid who murdered Charlie Kirk as anything other than one of them and doing everything they can to score political points from.
President Trump posted, "Great news for America. The ratings challenge Jimmy Kimmel show is canceled. Congratulations to ABC for finally having the courage to do what had to be done." Senior national correspondent William Lajeunesse. William.
Well, here's two things here. What Kimmel said, and secondly, why stations want him off the air. But then there's another layer. There's a $6 billion sale of some TV stations that some feel ABC caved to government pressure to get the deal done. But let's start with Kimmel. Seen here after ABC suspended his show for comments about Kirk's killer and this joke about President Trump.
This is not how an adult grieves the murder of someone he called a friend. This is how a 4-year-old mourns a goldfish.
Well, many found that offensive. Also, Tyler Robinson's mother says he's politically left, pro-gay and pro-trans rights.
He's pro-gay and pro-trans rights. Now, remember what I said before about them pretty much pushing the agenda of you can't pretty much have an opinion on things. Now, I don't know about you guys, but there are people that I know, and you know probably, that are against or even for transgenders, right? That's not what we're talking about. There's even people that are for gays and are not for gays. You have friends that are gay. You don't necessarily judge them, right? Correct. So, the thing is, there are people that are pretty much against all of it in general, and you are not allowed to say anything about it whatsoever. That's just one form of example of what we're talking about here. What they are trying to say is that you are not allowed to think for yourself anymore. That is what they are slowly trying to say to you. You are not allowed to think for yourself anymore. We tell you what to think.
Well, it's wrong.
Now, before he continues, the whole goldfish joke, right? That speaks volumes because it stung Trump. It stung Trump. Remember the video that I showed you guys, and even you guys even pointed out that it was AI, that it seemed very fake. His public address to Charlie Kirk and his condolences. Then he misses the visual to go play golf. So was the joke far-fetched, or did it just hit home?
That America's broadcasters are standing up to serve the interests of their community. We don't just have this progressive foie gras coming out from New York and Hollywood.
So that prompted this from the ACLU and Democrats. Jimmy Kimmel is the latest target of the Trump administration's plan to silence critics and control what American people read and watch.
This is just despicable, disgusting, and against democratic values.
America is a less free place if late-night comedians cannot do and say what they want.
We should not be going after people for this. Look, did he get some things wrong? Yeah. I mean, but he is not a commentator, a news anchor. This is somebody who's a comedian.
Well, many feel he is a social commentator, but Kimmel can say what he wants, but ABC can also hold him responsible for it.
We still have free speech, but if you're putting a television show on, broadcasting to millions of people nationwide, and you're telling lies, sure, you can do that. That's free speech, but there are consequences to it.
And here's the backstory, Harris. The red dots you see are ABC-owned affiliates by Sinclair Broadcasting. The yellow dots represent some of the 32 ABC stations owned by Nexstar, which is trying to buy 64 more stations in a $6 billion deal that must be approved by the FCC. So many feel that Kimmel is being pulled off the air until ABC can get that deal done, or at least on Nexstar's behalf, help them get this deal done. They suspended Kimmel only until that deal goes through, and he makes an apology, then comes back on the air. But I will say, ABC is losing some money. He makes about $6 million a month for the network, so it's not chump change, if you will.
Jimmy Kimmel will not be apologizing. I'm going to tell you that right now firsthand. Jimmy Kimmel would not be apologizing, because apologizing as a comedian for telling the truth means you're apologizing for giving up your own right to say what you want as a comedian and give your opinion, especially if you're telling the truth. You can't apologize for telling the truth.
Having him off the air.
He also makes a lot of money. I mean, think about it. And his ratings are low. I mean, they pay him anyway. William, he does have at least one other show on that network. Any word on that?
What show's that?
He's got like a game show on as well. No, okay.
I hate to say I go to sleep.
You
didn't see it.
Oh, and that says it all. Okay, William Lodgen S., great reporting. Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.
That says it all about the ratings. In focus now, Ben Shapiro, podcast host. Great to see you today. First of all, you're in the media. You're seeing this blow up, as we all did, in social media over the last 24 hours, especially last night. Your first reaction?
This is Ben Shapiro, the gentleman that Candace Owens was speaking to, that Andrew Schultz was speaking of. This is the gentleman that was supposedly having a, hypocrisy moment about freedom of speech and censorship. Ben Shapiro was pretty much, all for you need to be able to say what you want. Government can't tell you what to do, yada, yada, yada. But listen to how he is now.
My first reaction is I'm sort of surprised that it took 10 years for the public to sound off on how much Jimmy Kimmel sucks. I mean, the reality is that he's been awful at his job for full on a decade. His ratings have been terrible. He has become not a comedian, but as Guy Benson over there has said, the woke pope of late night comedy. And so affiliates looking at Jimmy Kimmel at this point and saying, you know what, we don't wish to be associated with Jimmy Kimmel's program. That is perfectly well within the ambit of what affiliates very often do when they don't like the programming or they don't like the things that particular hosts are saying. Sinclair has made very clear their feelings about Jimmy Kimmel. They say they're going to replace his show on the air this Friday with an hour-long tribute to all of our friend Charlie Kirk, which I think is exactly the right move. I would not be shocked at all if that tribute received significantly higher ratings than Jimmy Kimmel's show did in that slot.
Well, back in 2017, there was somebody who already felt like Jimmy Kimmel didn't have great humor. In fact, he tweeted about it. Charlie Kirk. Look at this. Charlie Kirk said then, October 5th, 2017, Jimmy Kimmel isn't funny. Ben.
Well, I mean, Charlie was right about a lot of things. That is just another thing that Charlie was right about. And again, I think that the question as to whether Kimmel is losing his position, whether he ever comes back due to public pressure or whether it's due to the Trump administration is an interesting question. But there's no question that...
Now, whether or not he really said that back then or did remains to be seen. The way they tried to emphasize and make it such a big deal that Charlie Kirk said that is my point exactly of how they're trying to push the agenda of removing freedom of speech. The lengths that they are going to do that is what I'm trying to put on display here.
The general public was not buying what Jimmy Kimmel was selling, and that was evident from the ratings. And if affiliates, again, say, you know what, we don't wish to put this on our stations, well, nobody has a right to a late-night show on ABC or its affiliates.
Well, Kimmel was far from the only person in the legacy media pushing the false narrative that the suspect was MAGA and motivated by far-right ideology. Watch this.
The shooter was right-wing. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. It's not really hard to figure out. In fact, he was very, very right-wing.
He had at least some association or affinity or fascination or interest in this Groyper group, which would lead you to believe that he's actually not a leftist.
There was an incredible amount of angry discourse from the right, blaming the Democrats, blaming liberals, saying, you're the reason this happened. Only to find out, surprise, 22-year-old white dude, love guns, didn't check it in them boxes y'all thought he would check, did he?
I mean, at least they are showing us who they are.
It was very clear early on exactly what was going on here. I mean, the early accounts from media outlets, including places like The Guardian and Tablet Magazine, were reporting that friends and family of the shooter said that he had turned very hard to the left. We knew very early on what was etched on those bullets, which included not only gamer language, but...
Now, notice again how they're trying to split things down the middle with the leftists and the right, right? Notice how they're putting that in there every single step of the way. Oh, we knew he was a leftist, but he was actually a right? He was a conservative. That's what they're trying to paint the picture of. Like, which one was he? Was he a leftist? Oh, he has to have been a leftist because he shot Charlie Kirk. Oh, well, no, he was a right. He was for MAGA. Well, what if I told you none of that actually even mattered? I'll get to that in just a second.
A language that was associated with apparently trans issues. And of course, it was pretty clear very early on, as early as Saturday, actually, that this person was a gay man who was in a relationship with another man who believed he was a woman, and they were both into a phenomenon that can only be described as furriness. And so the idea that this was in any way a right-wing shooter was debunked extraordinarily early on, and yet that line continued to be retailed. Now we see a sort of backup line, which is, well, actually, it was just a personal psychological issue. It had to do with his relationships. We've seen the line that actually was apolitical, that had nothing to do with politics at all. All of that is absolute sheer nonsense. He says in those text messages with his gay lover that Charlie Kirk was hateful, and the reason he thought Charlie Kirk was hateful is because of Charlie's views specifically on the gay and trans issues.
And, you know, I'm thinking about some of the comments from Montel Williams and others who have, you know, talked about the fact that it was just his broken heart, basically. It was some sort of a love situation, and he was brokenhearted. Look, I do want to talk about this just big picture for a second, because I have said this before. I think more speech is always better, not into killing speech. But we're in a moment right now, you know, you want to talk about the FCC. We're not handled by them. We don't have a license from them. Broadcast stations do. And what's appropriate, what isn't. I'm all for more free speech, more speech, but it comes with responsibility. And we used to have that in this country, and it seems to have gone away. Your thought?
Again, social consequences for bad speech, that is a normal part of American life. I think the question over the past 20 years is whether it's been too broadly applied to mainstream views like Charlie's views. You know, Charlie would say a man is not a woman, and then you'd have social consequences for saying something perfectly normal. And you say something off the wall, no social consequences. Well, social consequences or market consequences for saying stupid stuff on your late night TV show on ABC, those are market consequences, social consequences. Now, the question of government involvement, again, raises some other issues, I think, and muddies the waters.
Ben Shapiro, always great to have you in focus. Thank you very much.
I'm Steve Ducey.
I'm Brian Kilmeade.
And I'm Ainsley Earhart. And click here to subscribe to the Fox News YouTube.
So now, right? Where does that leave us, right? Well, remember when we went over Obama's movie, right? What was the name of Obama's movie that he did? Let's see. Obama movie. What was the Obama movie that was on Netflix called? It was a huge one that was done. Leave the World Behind. That's right. Leave the World Behind. Now, when we went over Leave the World Behind, Obama was pretty much trying to tell us, in a nutshell, to just leave America behind. It's no other way to put it. And the reason why he was saying that, you saw the different subliminals, the Tesla cars going haywire, freedom of speech being removed, rights being removed, people being told when and where they can go, people being isolated with curfew and being forced to be together and things like that, right? I want you guys to listen to Obama addressing the Charlie Kirk situation. And notice what he says.
Well, speaking of the events of the world, you are in Pennsylvania, as you know, earlier this year, the governor's mansion, the subject of an arson attack, the tragedy in Minnesota back in June, the horrific murder in Utah of a conservative activist. Are we at an inflection point in our country? Where are we today?
Well, we are certainly at an inflection point, not just around political violence, but there are a host of larger trends that we have to be concerned about. I think it is important for us at the outset to acknowledge that political violence is not new. It has happened at certain periods in our history. But it is something that it is anathema to what it means to be a democratic country. And regardless of where you are on the political spectrum, what happened to Charlie Kirk was horrific and a tragedy. What happened, as you mentioned, to the state legislators in Minnesota, that is horrific. It is a tragedy. And there are no ifs, ands, or buts about it. The central premise of our democratic system is that we have to be able to disagree and have sometimes really contentious debates without resort to violence. And when it happens to some, but even if you think they're quote unquote on the other side of the argument, that's a threat to all of us. And we have to be clear and forthright in condemning it. Now, that doesn't mean that we can't have a debate about the ideas that people who were victims of political violence were promoting. And so I've noticed that there's been some confusion, I think, around this lately. And frankly, coming from the White House and some of the other positions of authority that suggest, even before we had determined who the perpetrator of this evil act was, that somehow we're going to identify an enemy. We're going to suggest that somehow that enemy was at fault, and we are then going to use that as a rationale for trying to silence discussion around who we are as a country and what direction we should go. And that's a mistake as well. And so, look,
So I can't run it back, of course. I know you caught it. I know you caught it. What he said just now. We cannot allow the fault of that victim, of the fault of this enemy. We cannot allow that to remove us having discussion around this. Because that would remove the foundation that this country is on. He's talking again about our freedom of speech. Without him trying to say it, he had to tip. If you notice, Obama is, this has nothing to do with age, why he's speaking like this. I know some of you are listening to this. Mean Gene, what's going on? He's like a rapper now. Never heard of them until they get smoked. Maybe they more commonly connected than we know. Yeah, it's a bit more of a connection than we know. It's definitely that. But with Obama, if you notice how he's slowly speaking here, right? He's sort of tiptoeing around his words. That's not by accident. Again, this has nothing to do with age and why he's tiptoeing around his words. He's doing that for the simple fact that he knows the censorship that America is under right now, even though he is just a president, or just a former president. He's one of the most liked and, more charismatic of the presidents that ever did it, right? But even he knows he can be clipped at a moment's notice. He can be removed, if you will. And his voice would not be mattered. His voice would not matter or be heard. So that's why he's tiptoeing around his words and how he actually says them. On top of, this is someone, of course, that was briefed in a lot of things to come in the near future. So he can't say every single thing that he wants to say right now. He simply cannot. He's not allowed to. As part of the oath that he took. He's not allowed to say the actual truth. He is still a Freemason at the end of the day. So remember what I always said about Freemasons, what we studied before. Freemasons will always tell you what's going on, but they'll tell you by going around it. They'll go around it and subliminally tell you the truth. It's called hiding in plain sight. So he's pretty much telling you that, hey, we should not be condemning Jimmy Kimmel for his thoughts on what happened with Charlie Kirk and what's happening with Donald Trump and the MAGA movement and the government. We should not be censoring people and condemning them and canceling them just because they have an opinion.
Obviously, I didn't know Charlie Kirk. I was generally aware of some of his ideas. I think those ideas were wrong. But that doesn't negate the fact that what happened was a tragedy and that I mourn for him and his family. He's a young man with 2 small children and a wife who obviously, and a huge number of friends and supporters who cared about him. And so we have to extend grace. We can also, at the same time, say that I disagree with the idea that the Civil Rights Act of 1964 was a mistake. That's not me politicizing the issue. It's making an observation about who are we as a country. I can say that I disagree with the suggestion that my wife or Justice Jackson does not have adequate brain processing power. I can say that I disagree that Martin Luther King was awful. I can disagree with some of the broader suggestions of that liberals and Democrats are promoting a conspiracy to displace whites and replace them by ushering in illegal immigrants. Those are all topics that we have to be able to discuss honestly.
Now, again, notice how he went there. He tiptoed right around it. New Eyes, what's going on? He tiptoed right around it, but he got to it. He got to it. If you've been paying attention, all those things, and this is why I felt the need to show those clips last night, or should I say the other night. You at work? That's what's up. That's what's up. I hope you're doing okay at work. I hope you're doing okay. I hope everything's all right at work. I hope you're having a good time, and I hope you do get home safe, of course, from work. When we went over the clips of Charlie Kirk, I wanted you guys to see every bit of example of how he thought and his beliefs and things that he said from the horse's mouth. Nothing that everyone else was saying about him or anything like that. It was straight from him. Okay? If you notice, a lot of these same beliefs that Obama is talking about he disagrees with, without saying Charlie Kirk's name, he's bringing up all of the things that Charlie Kirk was for. Saying that your wife was incompetent. Saying that Martin Luther King was an awful person. Things of that nature. You saw he went through different examples combating what Charlie Kirk thought. In closing, starting to say, hey, we should not be splitting each other down the middle in any kind of way. But he subliminally said it where, oh, we shouldn't be saying, yo, we were trying to just shut whites out, which is also the truth. We are not trying to shut nobody's trying to shut anybody out. That's the whole thing. Nobody is trying to shut anybody out from anything anywhere. And that is the agenda that they're actually pushing, is that we are trying to split each other down the middle, and no one is about that. No one is about that. But Project 2025 is about that. That's the problem.
And forthrightly, while we still insist that in that process of debate, we respect other people's right to say things that we profoundly disagree with. That's how we should approach this. Now, the last point I'll make on this, or building on a point I made earlier, I've been very impressed with Governor Cox in Utah and how he's approached some of these issues. I suspect Governor Cox and I disagree on a whole bunch of stuff. He is a Republican, a self-professed conservative Republican. But in his response to this tragedy, as well as his history of how he engages with people who are political adversaries, he has shown, I think, that it is possible for us to disagree while abiding by a basic code of how we should engage in public debate. I think your own governor here, Josh Shapiro, has done the same thing. When I was president, in the aftermath of tragedies, when Dylan Roof went into a black church and, based on his own words, shot a group of folks who were engaged in Bible study and who had invited him in. And according to him, It was for racist reasons. As President of the United States, my response was not, who may have influenced this troubled young man to engage in that kind of violence, and now let me go after my political opponents and use that.
You heard that? Literally, again, he is emphasizing the fact that the same exact thing that Jimmy Kimmel is being condemned for and being suspended for, Obama just said the same exact thing. We should not be saying that this person was either left or right. That part should not matter whatsoever. It should not matter whether or not the shooter was a left, righty, whatever the fuck, ambidextrous, whatever you want to call it. The part about his political stance should not matter on what happened and what he did, supposedly, right? We'll get to that. It is the fact that they are trying to use this situation in this incident as a way to start the Civil War. And Obama knows that the Civil War is coming.
George Bush.
Thank you so much, DTM. I greatly appreciate that.
Again, I don't agree with him on a lot of stuff, but he is a good, gracious man, and one of the, I thought, most commendable things that he did after 9/11, the most horrific thing to happen to the United States during the course of my lifetime, in my memory, in the aftermath of this terrible tragedy, made a point. We are going to go after the people who perpetrated this. But he explicitly went out of his way to say, we are not at war against Islam, and systematically and repeatedly talked about how we can't use this as a way to divide and target fellow Americans. And so when I hear not just our current president, but his aides, who have a history of calling political opponents vermin, enemies, who need to be targeted, that speaks to a broader problem that we have right now, and something that we're going to have to grapple with, all of us, whether we're Democrats, Republicans, independents. We have to recognize that on both sides, undoubtedly there are people who are extremists and who say things that are contrary to what I believe are America's core values. But I will say that those extreme views were not in my White House. I wasn't embracing them. I wasn't empowering them. I wasn't putting the weight of the United States government behind extremist views. And that
talk to him, Obama.
Is
thank you for the sub, DTM.
When we have the weight of the United States government behind extremist views, we've got a problem. And so your original question is, are we at an inflection point? We're at an inflection point in the sense that we always have to fight for our democracy. And we have to fight for those values that have made this country the envy of the world. And I often say democracy is not self-executing. It depends on us as citizens, regardless of our political affiliations, to stand up for certain core values, because otherwise we may not have them.
Wow.
In a nutshell, again, Obama pretty much letting you know the same way he did and and leave the world behind. America is becoming that place. He specifically said, hey, we have a president right now that has extremist views. And what he means by extremist is someone that is willing to do whatever he needs to do to get it done, whether that means it's by violence or whether it's not by violence. Of course, he'll make it look like it's something that's just for the American people. He'll always make it look like it's for the benefit of the American people, but is it really? Is it really? Is it really at all?